welcome to my podcast on real relationships. My name is Sue Farrance and I am a relationship expert, international speaker and best-selling author of the book You Have a Half. I decided to start this podcast because, in my opinion, relationships are currently not being portrayed as what they really are. Whether you're watching the news or on social media, the perception given to people is wrong. And my aim is to talk about what happens in the real world, talk about real stories, and listen to what real people think, do, or go through, as opposed to creating expectations of something that doesn't actually exist. I may not agree with everything that is said by my guests, but it is their chance to express their opinions and their stories. And here today, we have something a little bit different. We are going to talk about creating good and healthy relationships with customers with Sue Farrance. Hi, Sue.
Hi, Sophie. Good to be here. How are you? Yeah, great, thanks. It's nice to be part of this because relationships are key to what I do.
Oh, thank you. So, tell us a bit about yourself then.
My name's Sue. I'm from Hampshire. I've got the typical 2.4 children. I have a husband now. At this late age, I have a husband. I just like talking to people, communicating, and I think communication is really undervalued. Relationships are really undervalued. So anything that I can add to on that would be great, because I think people can always learn from one another.
Definitely. So after the personal relationships that we have at home, relationships in the workplace are probably up there. And one aspect for a lot of people would be to deal with customers. So how do you create a fair, healthy relationship with a customer?
That's easy. Honesty, transparency are the two key things. Learning how to communicate with the customers is all like case by case scenario because everybody is different. But being honest with your customer, I think, is the key point. A lot of people aren't. They're too scared to tell the truth. Actually, be yourself, be normal, be open, and you can only learn from it and help to grow that relationship. When you're closed, when you're hiding behind things that you don't really know and you don't admit it, can only be detrimental.
So let me share a little story with you. Back in the day, I used to work in security and we used to deal with alarm response and mobile patrols. On a Saturday, I received a phone call and it was a chap that only had a key holding with us. And he said that the alarm system had gone down. So could we do some extra patrols to make sure it not been broken into or whatever? I said yes. Obviously, it was more expensive because short-term cover. And I said to him to send me an email just to cover, all bases, because it happened once in the past that someone hadn't and then refused to pay. So on the Monday, I contacted him to say that on the Saturday, we'd done 10 extra patrols and 12 on the Sunday, but I'd not had his email. And he replied that I wasn't gonna get an email anyway, because I gave him the good idea of not having to pay for it because there was now no proof.
Yeah. So he's just betrayed your trust instantly.
Yeah. So and I was fuming.
Yeah, you've trusted him, and he's just done what a not very nice person would do. So with that, you've learned and it is one of those things you learn from each time. It's not going to work 100% being transparent. From your point of view, from a recipient, it's really hard to deal with because you get angry, but you're also disappointed in them.
I was actually speechless, which is rare.
I think that's the most dangerous time. I think you're quite similar because you will say when you're not happy. But when there's no words, that should really convey to somebody just how much that was not right. Yeah. But it's always really difficult. But in the long term, you've learned from that. You've learned about that customer.
Really? I mean, I never did it again.
And I say there's different levels of transparency. Sometimes how you word it. You could probably have had that conversation with somebody else 2 weeks later, conveyed exactly the same thing, but just worded it slightly differently, and they'd have been respectful of that. But
I mean, not that I want to play on that, but the guy was slightly older. He was a man, and how old was I at the time? Probably about just 25, 26 tops. And I look younger anyway, so it wasn't necessarily, how can I put it? I'd only met him once. I didn't like him when I first met him because he was a little bit patronising. And I do think that sometimes in some jobs,
Yeah.
and with certain personalities, you know, they can look down on you just because you're female and you look too young.
Yeah, definitely. There are still those people out there. Personally, they're the ones I love.
Well, they're a challenge.
Yeah, they are a challenge because there's nothing more satisfying than when somebody starts off with that patronising attitude, and how you deal with them, you turn them round. And so they deal with you properly. It's much the same as when you've got a really disgruntled customer and you can turn them from being that to being your biggest advocate. Those two things, don't get me wrong, having just good conversations is lovely, but the motivation to do that is because of the odd ones that aren't like that. So yeah, you will always get those patronising ones and the assumptions that are made. See, for me, talking to people, when it's on the phone, for example, they have no clue how old I am. But I'm female. And they'll automatically assume because I'm female, I don't really know what I'm talking about. But in lots of cases I do, but I'll always admit when I don't.
And I think it is, isn't it? It is honesty, but sometimes, I'm not going to say a little white lie doesn't go amiss, but you've got to know who you're talking to.
Exactly. I mean, I'll hold my hands up. I've been known to blag it because it doesn't hurt, and it's just the way that you do it. As long as it's not an out and out lie, it's not dismissive of anyone. It's not illegal for a big thing. It's the way that you do it. And I think,
you know, I'm not condemning lying at all, but you know, what I'm trying to say is that in some circumstances,
yeah, exactly,
say the better.
Yes,
they don't need to know the ins and outs.
No, exactly. That's the thing, and that's, I think, the difference in how I see blagging it or a white lie to how somebody else might see it. For me, it just might not be saying. It's like a circle. You can tell them a portion of it. You don't need to let them know the whole way round. And then they're quite happy. And it's just judging that.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, you know, as we're talking, it just reminds me of more stories that are just creeping out. Because sometimes there is power struggles. I mean, obviously the environment I was in wasn't necessarily face to face, and there was an element of expectations. I mean, I recall one particular woman, we used to have to do 12 patrols a night on set side because they built a skate park next to a glass building. So with teenagers and stuff, she was a bit worried. Long story short, it's not that we had a bit of bad luck, but out of 4 vehicles that were fully, you know, delivered and everything, we had one left because 3 had been in quite serious car crashes. And she really went to town that she wanted it to be a delivered car, and I was like, we can't do that, you know, because we've only got one left, and you know, your site is visited by 4 different people through the night, and 3 of them are plain cars. There's nothing we can do about it. And she wasn't happy with that, but what can I do? I can't magic up a car from nowhere.
Exactly. I mean, the customer will be frustrated, but you've been honest. You can't do more than you can do. And there are always the people out there that expect. I think they think there's like a tree at the end of your garden or end of the office, that whatever they're asking for, you can just go to and wish for it and it's going to arrive. And you can't do that. In certain cases you can. If somebody's asking for something little and it's something you can source quite quickly and with very little cost, yeah, it's achievable, but actually you're not managing their expectations for the future. You're being honest, you couldn't do it. Yes, she's going to be grumpy, but there's not a lot you can do about that if you physically can't do it.
And to be fair, I completely get her point. It's better with a car, you know, that signals its security when you've got a bunch of teenagers next door to the glass building. I completely get it, but it's still impossible. I can't magic one out, you know. But in the next breath, I also think that sometimes people don't really hate themselves. And with that, I think for me, my main complaint around that is around networking and things like LinkedIn or whatever, where people connect with you but never follow up. So what is the point?
Yeah, there is no point. LinkedIn, people do it for the numbers, but actually you don't need numbers. You can have very few connections and they're good connections. and LinkedIn will work for you. But I don't just send random LinkedIn requests. I have been known to accept them from time to time. Now I've started really vetting them. So if somebody connects with me, I don't know them, I send them back a message, say, you know, why are you looking to connect? Then I set a diary reminder. If they haven't got back to me within a week and we haven't chatted, I just remove it because there is no point. Do you go up to 50 million people in the street a week and just say, hello, I'm so-and-so, who are you? You don't do it. So why do it online and why do it at networking?
You're giving me ideas. I think we should do a 2-hour show of doing that and see what kind of reactions you get.
Mind you, I am quite bonkers. I have been known, I do just chat to people anywhere. But that's the thing, I'll follow it up, but then I see the same people again and I'll speak to them. So for me, I always do the follow-up. Well, 9 times out of 10, I do the follow-up. We'll all slip up because we are all human. But there are certain people, and networking is another thing. People will throw their business cards at you and then or you could have a really good chat with them on a one-to-one and there's no follow-up. Yes, you can follow up, but actually everyone has to learn that they have to do their own bit. It shouldn't be one way, it's two-way. Every relationship, personal or business, is two-way. So,
yeah, I completely agree. And I think, you know, talking of relationships in the work environment, shall we call it, I actually had a thing, I think it was about a month ago. Guy connects on LinkedIn with me with a cryptic message, which was that it would be definitely good for us to stay connected. And I'm like, what do you mean to stay connected, for starters? And why would he be good? And I'm thinking, oh no, it wasn't good, it was beneficial. That's it. That was
right.
And I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to take you up on that. So sends him a message saying, oh, what would it be beneficial then? Thinking it's going to be beneficial for you, I can tell, but not for me in any way, shape or form. He says, oh, I just spotted, funny enough, your podcast, and that's why I thought I'd connect. Okay, fine. So accepted. Within a day, receive an email from him. I'd certainly have not given him my email address, but yes, it is available if you are one of my contacts. Saying that, you know, would I be interested in this, that, and the other? Promoting podcast, funny enough. And I'm like, no, I'm not interested. I've not asked you anything. And at the bottom, there's a little thing saying I can opt out if I so wish. Well, I haven't opted in. So I didn't reply, ignored him to see what was going to happen. Second email turns up a week later saying, I don't appear to have heard from you. I called him again. I had by that point taken him off LinkedIn anyway. And bugger me, 3 days ago, he sent me another request, not looked at my profile, saying that it would be beneficial for us to stay connected. Really? You know, but people, I mean, how is he going to be successful with that sort of technique?
I think some people are still of the mindset, especially in business, if you throw enough out there, you'll get something back. But what they fail to realise is that may work to a certain degree, but then there will be people like yourself that remember him.
Oh, and yeah. Some people are anal.
Yeah, but should that come up in the future, he's going to be the last person that you approach.
Completely.
And it just doesn't work. And why also do they not remember that they've already tried this with you once? See, that to me is really rude.
See, I remember the stories are coming out. When I started being self-employed, I was doing events for single people, which, funny enough, is how we met originally. Yeah. And it was quite obvious from the card. The name was Sophisticated Singles. And I went to one of these events, which was in a large cricket ground thing. And this guy, I presented my card to him. And he showed me his and he went, I don't need your card and you don't need mine because with what you do, we won't be able to have a relationship or help one another. And I was like, well, you don't know that. He says, well, I'm married. And I'm thinking, well, I'm not necessarily, you know, hitting on you here. So I thought, right, he's obviously decided that, you know, I'm organising orgies, so I'm not for him.
He thought you were on the pull.
Yeah, exactly. So I just thought, you know, no, I'd like to know more about you. Give me your card and tell me more. And he starts saying how he set up this facilities business and this, that, and the other, and how he's looking to get in for, you know, with facilities managers who would look after security and cleaning. And I'm thinking, you stupid idiot, you really don't know my background and how many contacts I've got in the southeast of that nature that are still valid.
Yeah, because and that is the thing. People forget. They see you in that moment for what you're doing then, and they don't realise actually you have a history. Whether you're a day into your own business, a week, a year, a month, or you've moved on employment into a new sector, they forget that there's history. And also that if you're going to networking, for example, you're bound to have met lots of other people. And it is that old thing about it. It's not just you, it's who you know.
Exactly.
And
right.
I just don't understand some people that are still out there networking. There are some people that go to networking, I think it's their social life personally. That's, they do it to get out because they don't do anything else. I'm not saying that's everyone. There is an element of that. But they don't even do that properly. So it's no wonder that that's all they've got. And then others that are going out for a business to network and they're not bringing any value back from networking. They blame the networking and the events and the hosts and everything else, but it's not them at fault, as in the hosts and the networking groups. It's the participant, because they don't get it. They don't get that you have to get to know people. It's ridiculous.
And I think this is it, and it's the same with customers. You have to get to know them. They need to get to know you. You need to know how far you can push them. They need to know how far they can push you.
Definitely. I mean, I've had several customers when it was my own business. I had various different degrees of customers, so from your one-man band to larger corporates. I must admit, I treat them all the same. If I'm having a bad day, they know it. But that's because I got to know my customers. When I've been in an employed role, I've been exactly the same. I'm me with everybody. Also, being a large corporate does not give you entitlement at all. You are exactly the same. If you're a customer or even a potential customer, you, regardless of the spend, the communication aspect and trying to build the relationship should be the same. Yeah, you could be thinking, well, they're going to pay me 10 grand a year, whereas they're only going to pay me £1,000. Actually, that £1,000 customer could then refer on lots more. And that comes back to who they know. So you can't ever just pigeonhole them like that. And I say, it's not to let people be entitled. That's my big thing.
And I think that unfortunately it is an issue when, especially with larger corporate, I think, but where people feel that they've got an entitlement and there is a power struggle of some description, because they feel they're more powerful than you. You're just the subcontractor or the person providing whatever it is.
I think that's where, in some ways, a lot of people are failing, as in not the corporate, the businesses that are trying to provide services to the corporates, because they have this mindset that the corporates are going to have to be, it's got to be, all I's dotted, T's crossed, very formal, whatever. They're not. And you have to start to talk to them and be you, be honest, be transparent to find out who they are, because it's like with everything, everybody is different. And until you do it and until you start to talk, you won't get that. And you can't just put corporates in this little pedestal offering, because they are just people. And I think at the end of the day, that's how I treat my customers, whether I say I'm working for myself or as an employee. Your customers are there, but they're people. So they deserve to be treated as people. And in the same token, you deserve to be treated like a person too. So you shouldn't be belittled, you shouldn't be patronised, you shouldn't be looked down on, because everybody is equal in that respect.
And I think, it's interesting because there's also the element of being human. And I'm just about to share a story. What I want to say is how people sometimes behind the social media platforms can be very different, even though they're still customers. I mean, I part of a group which is mainly online, and some people ask for support at times. And this particular person was asking, what she should do in this particular circumstance, where she was making cakes or whatever it was, something like that, I think, if I remember rightly. Customer had cake, ate all of it, and then said that actually she wanted 3/4 of it, but wanted a refund because it was dry and disgusting. And she was like, should I give it back to them because, you know, I've got no proof either way. But if you've had 3/4 of it, it would indicate that it wasn't that bad.
Yeah.
At the same time, it was a repeat customer. So she was like, well, are they going to not come back and destroy me and my reputation if I don't give them the money back? And beyond social media, that person was quite aggressive, you know?
Yeah, see, that's the thing. People do come across in different ways to how they actually are. But also in that, I do find it a little bit, I find it worrying in some ways that somebody, you know, especially if they're in a business that's established, because if they've got a repeat customer, they're quite established. Why that they can't make that decision? Because they're the best placed ones to make that decision. Yes, I get asking for support, and I'm all for that, and I will always try and help in the groups that I'm on where I can. But you have to have a bit of accountability to yourself. If that's a repeat customer, asking a whole group of people that know no history, know nothing for what they should do is not ridiculous, but I just find it very, to me, that's what somebody would do at the beginning of a startup.
Yeah, and I think this is the thing. A lot of people, whether it is in their own businesses or even sometimes in the corporate world, don't want to show I'm not contradicting myself completely with what I'm just about to say, but they don't want to show that they're weak, but they lack self-confidence. And I think that was why she was really asking. Yeah,
and I do think confidence is a massive part of it. And sometimes you just do want to, but again, that's how you write that, because you could, and I do actually think I remember the post as well.
There you go.
And I think it's very much about how it's written. It could be, perception online is massive. So how you write something, how you communicate is huge. I've been involved in several things. So where I was working before, we were a distributed team. So we used to communicate online. You had to be very, very careful, because you had to always think, how am I writing this? How is it going to be perceived?
Yeah.
Because everybody is different. And sometimes it can mean that you, especially on a forum or on a group page or something where you're asking for support, I still think you have to be very mindful of the fact of how it can be perceived.
Yeah.
Because the damage that could do to your business because of just simply how you've written it. And you have to always look at how the other person is. And in a group, obviously there's going to be millions is a bit over the top, but lots and lots of people looking at it.
And they've all got an opinion as well.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just sometimes it can mean that what you're posting is quite bland, but it's best just to say factual. And at that point, again, for me, the biggest thing that people can do like that is just say, right, I'm sure I know what I'm doing. This is just a sanity check because I'm having a bit of a wobble on my self-confidence. To me, that actually says a lot more about that person.
But I think, as you said, it's perception, and it is perception, obviously, online, because whatever strand of work you do, it's used more and more and more and more.
Yeah.
Where, you know, I can think of big names who didn't have a budget for social media, but now run, you know, and pay YouTubers or whatever to have them on their promotional videos and whatever. So you've got that, but then there's also the perception that, you know, you're giving of yourself, which can be good or bad.
Yeah.
So your customers could think something of you which is completely different to the truth.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I come across a lot of my customers, they're like, God, I mean, one of them, he's like, God, you're so gobby. I'm like, it's only because I say what I think. But I'll be honest, over the last couple of years, I've really filtered that down. But I filtered it so much to the point that I wasn't me. So now I'm coming back to me. Some of my newer customers are getting a bit of a shock.
Yeah.
But I think online, I think face-to-face is easier.
Yes.
Because obviously you've got expression and everything else. And we just all need to master a bit more of online, and just remember that other people's perception is how they're going to remember you and how they're going to think of you.
And I think the other thing as well, it's too easy sometimes to hide online. Or, you know, like, I can't remember who it was. Someone had a really bad review for the business, one review on the Facebook page or wherever it was. She doesn't even know the person.
No, so I bet you then other people jump onto that and give her good reviews. No, let the bad reviews stay there, because if I look at a business and I see it's got say, for example, 90 reviews, they're all 5 stars, my first reaction is, right, are they all their friends or their friends? Are they all relatives or whatever? Because you're always going to have something that's not so good. And the thing is, that bad review, challenge it in a nice way. See if you can turn it or get some justification, which allows you to learn for your business.
At the same time, having been on the receiving end of a couple of bad reviews, some of them are quite hurtful, you know?
Yeah, I get that, but that's where you have to then, I think this is where, because everybody else will be looking at it. So it's how you deal with it. So yes, it can be hurtful. That doesn't have to go online. And
No. I'm talking here, Amazon review, right? With no name, so you can't even contact them to say, do you mind? I mean, on that one, there was nothing to say anyway. She said that my book was not worth the money, nothing new, nothing special, don't buy it. I think it's quite clear she didn't enjoy that. That's fine, but yeah, you know, I don't think I can turn it around.
No, you can't turn that one around. But I think it's Facebook reviews you can, but I do think people hide it too much. And I think we're saying, you know, everyone is different. Everyone has their own opinion. And actually, let's be transparent about those that don't like what we do or what we say.
But I also sometimes think that, you know, if I take this one that, you know, really went out of her way to say how bad my book is, I'm also not convinced she would have gone out of her way to say how good it was. And I think this is the thing a lot of people use online to just moan. Yeah. And be hidden behind that screen, and they feel safe and that they can say and be whoever they want.
That's a lot of people get their power from that. I mean, that's the thing. So if you turn that around again, so when would be the last time you complained, and when would be the last time you did something that was, so you didn't complain, you made a point of good service? So for me, the last time I complained, God, I can't even remember, and I really can't. The last time I did the opposite was last week. Went to Hotel de Van, and it was a VIP night, so it didn't cost anything. But there was a guy that was doing cocktails, and he was awesome. He had the best. The drinks were great, don't get me wrong, but the service was brilliant. He was chatty, he was friendly, he was building that relationship, and he was only young, but he really stood out. So before I left, I spoke to the hotel manager, and then since then I went and put a thing on TripAdvisor and an email to the hotel, because he stood out. For me, I'd much rather I think, yes, if something's wrong and you really want to raise it, do it, but people also need to just validate all the good experiences more.
And I think, you know, I've got a couple of stories to share like that before we wrap up, but I had a Chinese at the weekend, and it was one that I don't normally use because I just wanted something different. And I didn't like it. I found it greasy, bland, just put the fact it had chili in it. And it was through Just Eat. And they then sent me an email saying, how was it? And I actually decided not to leave a bad review, because I thought, after all, who am I? Yeah, I didn't like it, but there was nothing wrong with it. It was just not to my taste. And I felt, you know, about how I felt with that review, that, you know, it wasn't worth the money, blah, blah, blah. And I thought, no, actually, I don't want to put someone through that, because they might have put their heart and soul into it, and it's just not to my taste. The next breath, went to Sainsbury's, and I like sesame bagels, but they don't always have them. So I asked the lady, you know, when they were going to get them next, and she actually took my phone number and rang me to say that they were in on a particular day, how many packs do I want to put aside. So I wrote a letter and took it to customer service to say thank you, because, as you said about this waiter, she was quite young, and I thought you really mustn't discourage that.
Exactly. But I think how you've got to that point with both of those is because of experience.
Completely.
But I think there are still a lot of us out there, and I say I'm not one of them, and I don't think you are, that just don't do that, and yet we've learned. So if you're treated badly on a review, you know how that feels. If you get a really good unexpected feedback through something that's quite random, you also know how that feels, and I think we could all pay that back a bit more.
I agree. I definitely agree. Right, Sue, thank you so much. It's been fascinating. We've completely digressed, but that's okay. That's how these things go.
That's all right then. I can't help it. I do tend to go off topic quite a lot, sorry.
That's okay, so do I. So for everybody else, I hope you enjoyed the show. So then please subscribe, leave us a nice review, not a bad one, thank you. And then come back for the next episode. Thank you.
Thanks, Sophie.